today for our special guest. My name is Maxine White, and I'm the Chief Judge for the courts in Milwaukee County, and we have your Executive Committee of the Milwaukee Community Justice Council and all of the leaders here today, all of the worker bees, and all of the people who make us look great, and probably should have this microphone instead of us. But I want to welcome you today and thank you.
I want to make a few things clear. One element of getting it right means having our kids closer to home. Closer to home is in fact the name of the initiative in New York.
Hi everybody, I'm Vinny Schiraldi. It's late, it's cold, I'm from New York City, I got my pinstripe suits and my wingtips on. I'm an academic, I'm a former government bureaucrat. And I have a PowerPoint presentation. So there's an exciting combination of factors, right? And especially young people, you're leaning in now. You're hearing all this, you're getting excited, we're pumping up. So I'll start by saying what we didn't do here today, and what we didn't do here today is examine your system. So I'm not telling you what to do today. I'm telling you what we did, and you can take whatever you want from that. That's not very decidedly not just we New York City people can run better locked custody than you state people. That was not what it was. It was not meant to be, we're just going to take 500 kids out of state custody and put 500 kids in locked custody in New York City. We decidedly wanted to reduce the number of kids in any custody and keep them home with services in their own families' homes the way any of us would want any of our own kids to do. By the time we got close to home, many of our facilities were completely or nearly empty, but fully staffed, because legislation had passed that said you have to wait a year after you announce you're going to close a facility before you can close it. So when Governor Cuomo toured, he literally toured a completely empty facility, and so this ran in the Opening Times Union, talking about the last inmate at Tryon being attacked there. There's a bunch of stuff that was leading up to. I'm going to give a quick summary of it. We had done a lot of incremental stuff in New York City. We created a risk assessment instrument. We started a whole bunch of new programs. The population was declining, but none of that was, we're going to take all the kids out of locked custody. It was just sort of good bits of stuff that was happening. The Andy Casey Foundation came in. They helped us even push further. We closed one of our detention facilities. We merged our juvenile justice agency. Where's the senator?
Right here.
Yeah. As per what you were talking about, juvenile justice went under our child welfare system, so now it had a different sort of feel to it. It was less of a correctional system and more of a child helping system. Not that child welfare was perfect, but it was better than the juvenile justice system was all by itself. So this was the alarm, similar to the alarm that's happened with you all at Lincoln Hills and Cumberland. Similarly, New York was going through the same thing. Human Rights Watch did a scathing report on what was happening to girls in our state youth prison system. The Justice Department followed that up. A young boy died, as I said, and after that the Justice Department did an investigation, wrote a findings letter to the governor that basically said, we're going to sue you if you don't settle. We had this reform-minded department head, Gladys Carrion, that came on, and she did a couple things. One thing is she, behind the scenes, got this governor's report done about the conditions, which pretty much agreed with the plaintiff's lawsuit, with the Justice Department lawsuit. And then she took Governor Cuomo on a tour of a completely empty facility before he was even governor, right in between the election, and that like 8-week period between the election and when you were the governor. So he came into office sort of furious about an empty facility there, he saw fully staffed.
And in terms of where we look to, some of the places that we sort of drew inspiration from included ROCA, which is a program in Massachusetts. It helped inform some of the thinking around alternative programs that would be housed under the Department of Probation, and really their model is very much focused on long-term relationship building with kids and sort of really intensive engagement. And so that was part of the thinking in terms of one of the alternatives that was brought online, the Missouri model. So the task force that I mentioned earlier actually took 2 different trips to Missouri that were organized as a way to help people kind of reimagine what things could look like. Missouri is kind of known in the field as a place that's doing a really good job on the placement side. And a lot of those facilities look nothing like sort of prisons. Some of them are based in communities or refurbish churches and schools and just have a very different feel. And then probably one of the most informative visits for us was in Wayne County, Michigan, which is Detroit. And Detroit had done something remarkable in the 10 years prior to like close to home, which was basically reduce their number of kids in state custody from hundreds and thousands to 2.
So then, because we're bureaucrats, we created something like this, right? And what the important thing about this is that what this is it's the tangible manifestation of the conversation that said, who should we lock up? Because when we asked that question, we really put it to people. They said, we should lock up kids that are of high risk and high severity. Those are the kids we should put in locked custody. I don't mind what that looks like just yet, but that's what they said. And kids who are low risk and low severity, that's those boxes on this corner. We should get them out of our offices as quickly as we can, because we're only going to mess them up. And that's when we came up with this Continuum of Care. Don't try to read it out, so in your face. Don't even try to read it. It almost doesn't matter what it says, right? Really, it literally almost doesn't matter what we thought were the programs. What matters is what you think of the programs. We went to a bunch of places. ATP1 is an alternative to placement. That program we got from Florida. ATP2 we got from Pennsylvania. ATP3 we got from Boston, and ATP4 we got from Oregon and South Carolina. So, we feel like we're really big because we invented all this. We didn't invent any of that stuff. We took it all from other places, and that's what our judges and our prosecutors and our defense attorneys and our police and our educators thought would be the kinds of programs that were rigorous enough to not put a kid in locked custody.
Pictures of buildings. These are what, like, if you were walking down the street, you wouldn't know that these are juvenile correctional facilities in New York City, but this is what they look like, not big, scary Lincoln Hills, Copper Lake type places. Placements fell. Again, it wasn't just a bed-for-bed transfer. Placements fell to 0 at the state level, but placements even in those, pictures of those programs I showed you fell by 68%. It's now actually 71% because we got the number all the way through 2018 after we made this chart. So that structured decision-making model and that continuum worked. And crime went down. Yay. Dropped like half, more than half in just the 4 years following the passage of close to home. I don't think that was because of close to home. But the real serious question was, close to home a jailbreak? Was it going to unleash a wave of juvenile crime on the city? Absolutely not. When you compare New York City to the rest of the state, which did not enact close to home, it was a city-only bill. Juvenile arrest declined more in New York City than in the rest of the state, and more in New York City, importantly, than in the previous 4 years. The final thoughts, James Carville, I think, once said, never let a good crisis go to waste. And we did not let a good crisis go to waste, or a bad crisis go to waste in New York. We were bold and innovative. That's not the time to be incremental in my view. Collaborating in partnership, I think I've said enough about that. Particularly, though, I don't want to forget the advocates were major partners in this. It would not have happened without advocates and community members. It wasn't just us government people getting in the room and figuring it out. And then it really wasn't a one-time thing. We had to keep coming back. It's not like you're fixed, you spike the ball in the end zone, and it's over. We got to keep staying on top of it. It's a complicated bunch of systems, working with kids who have real challenges in their lives, and to think that that's ever going to happen easily is a mistake. Thank you.
Obviously, your target population were youth that were involved with the judicial system.
Correct.
Was there anything to your program that was preventive, or did you learn anything through this process that could be considered preventive?
No, there was nothing that was preventive. We had enough problems about the people that were coming to my door, and sometimes I feel like the notion of, we got to go upstream is excuses made by department heads who run juvenile systems not to fix their stuff. So I'll go on record saying it. Not that I don't think it's important to do that, but damn it, I got a job to do. I'm going to do my job. I'm not going to howl at the moon of all the rest of the world's problems because I got problems. If I didn't want this job, I shouldn't have taken this job. Right? So my feeling was we got to deal with what we got. But that having been said,
Good morning. I have two questions, one for the folks from New York City and one for Milwaukee County. For the New York City folks, what was the budget? You know, we always got to think about the money, right? Mm-hmm. So that would be interesting to know. And for the Milwaukee County folks, I want to know what the forecasting looks like. Can we see that data? Where is that data?
So with the budget, we had about 300 and change kids in state custody. The state and city were spending $250,000 per kid per year. So just do that math. And that was the way it was in New York for every county. When you sent a kid to state custody, you paid half. And so when they sent the kids back to us, they gave us a decent chunk of their half back. So they gave us $41 million to go along with the kids that were coming back to us. And again, at that point, it was like 350, 70 kids. It's in the paper. I don't have it committed to memory. So the great thing about that was when the money came back from the state, it was operations money, not, Mark and I were just chatting about this, it wasn't construction money, it was annual money to take care of the kids, and we could use it for anything we wanted. We didn't have to put it into beds, so that allowed us to fund that continuum you saw. Some of those programs were pretty expensive, but they weren't $250,000 per kid per year. So we were able to add probation staff, we were able to add oversight monitors to the facilities, and fund decent facilities that did, had robust services even in the facilities for the kids.
In regard to the forecasting data, yes, we can make that public. I don't know if it's on our website currently. I don't believe it is, but we can certainly get it up there and give everyone some pretty detailed background about how we arrived at those numbers and what sort of things we might be able to do as a system to exercise program levers that could reduce those numbers.
You were saying it was rural at first, right? You said it's rural and facilities. Well, so that's better now. You saying it's rural? Yep. Okay. Some of the reason why it was rural is that's not only because inmates, which is also because of staffing. Staffing takes on a protocol, right? So they have a procedure to follow. What that has to do with the kids reacting in a way that will make it a little more critical for themselves.
So it's interesting, like, all the rules flow from a thing or a bunch of things, right? So, like, a bad thing would happen in one unit, and then everybody's rules would change, right? So, I'm trying to think of an example. There's like a million examples. Like, the way large institutions and large bureaucracies work is that if there's one problem with one kid, one time, we make a rule rather than just like dealing with that kid in that situation and individualizing it. We just make a rule. So now you got to go on lockdown, or now the whole unit's going to lose TV, right? And so, and that's just and that's frustrating for the kids, but it's also the staff is frustrated when they do that. And so when you have 200 kids in one place, that's what you do. I had 280 kids in my facility when I started, right? I had 60 when I left. And now it's down to 30. So, but in a 6-bed home, you just deal with the kid. You deal with the individual kid. Everybody doesn't have to lose TV. Everybody doesn't have to go on lockdown. You just staff up enough so you deal with that one kid.
I am not so concerned about the facility as I am. What are you going to do to the kids when they get in there? In other words, what is driving your program? What is the nucleus? And I hear a lot about models on what we're going to treat them with, the counseling. My concern is education. And I think that should be the nucleus. Yes. We hear a lot about not making sure, we don't have recidivism. What about persistence from crime? What about the fact, will they be able to transition once they're allowed? I talk a lot to the people down at skills, that's good. But the kids cannot read and write. So once they're out, 3 months on the job, they're back on the floor. I would like to see us have a program that is educational driven. That is the nucleus here. And I stand and I say I can do that. And I have approached several of the people at the department of health, Mark being one of them, to say that we need to work very closely with our university and the DOC to push the pendulum. We are not penalizing them. We want to make sure they enter into society and leave society. So education, and I stand here saying, I can do this.
Well, thank you, Ms. Scott. And as you said, we've had this conversation a lot, and I just, the only response I have to that is I think we're very aligned with what you're saying. We recognize the importance of education. It's essential for us to have a very strong education and transition, vocational transition element built into this model. So I appreciate your comments.
The questions are, how similar or different is New York than Wisconsin, and how confident am I that this would work here? Excellent questions, thank you. I don't think New York and Wisconsin are dramatically similar, right? I mean, like, we got 8.6 million people in one big city. You got like 5 million people in one whole big state. You know, like farms up in the state, and, you know, Milwaukee down here. So I think that you can't just take a thing that somebody did here and stick it on top of some other place. You got to do it the way you want to do it, not the way we did it. And take whatever lessons you think are worth taking from us and throw the other ones out. And that's what we did when we went to Detroit and Missouri and stuff like that. We didn't take everything. We just borrowed what we thought was relevant. And then what was the second question? Oh, how confident am I? I'm not even telling you. Yeah. Okay, well, let me tell you about the confident part. I'm not confident in any of it. You got to figure it out yourselves. I'm here to bring you stuff, and then you think about what you think is confidence. It doesn't matter how confident I am. I'm not 100% sure it would work here. I'm not even telling you what would work here. I'm just telling you about our experiences, and then I urge you to take a look at what our stuff is and see, oh, I like that, or I don't like that. And then you got to come up with your own level of confidence amongst all yourselves about whether you think that's right or not, because what I think really in some respects shouldn't matter.
And my question is related to the $41 million price tag. I think you said that was annually. Mm-hmm. So think about that number, and then think about both groups talking about the majority of their children being African American or children of color. I wonder, is there a monitoring system for the discretionary powers that are used to bring these children into the system? And is there a precedence establishing mechanism that will allow a child who's African American to be charged or processed in the same manner that a Caucasian child has been charged? You know, because as you mentioned, you know, if your child was one who had committed the same crime, and then he's entered into the system, if he's not dealt with by those discretionary powers in the same manner and given that same opportunity, then we continue to repeat the same problem. So, and then with those dollars, what could be done to, you know, I would say eliminate this problem and provide, you know, jobs for those families that would in turn, you know, create a ripple effect for the child that's coming up and seeing their parents working daily, and then they, you know, would have that education coming their way. So I wonder, is there a discretionary component or a monitoring system of that discretionary component that would, you know, give that child a chance, rather, you know, similar to that Caucasian child, rather than just shipping them off?
So I think close to home, substantially increased monitoring and transparency of the system, but nowhere near to the level you just talked about, right? I think that The state was now monitoring the city, and the city Department of Administration of Children's Services was monitoring the private programs, and all their reports are public and up online. That said, our original sin of slavery is something that I think continues to infect our justice system in America in a way that we've not grappled with. We've not said it out loud. We've not apologized for it. And it creeps in insidious ways. And there's just no excuse for 100% of the kids in my old system in D.C. or in the limited secure programs in New York being kids of color, and that goes beyond the justice system, right? The schools are implicated in that. How many kids get kicked out that are white? How many kids get kicked out of youth of color? This is something our society has to deal with in a very deep way. Did close to home touch that? That much.
Help us understand, for serious juvenile offenders, the definition here are for young people that have committed violent crime, extremely violent crime. Were they able to qualify for the spaces that you were able to make to downsize your facility, especially in New York, or was it separate? What did New York do to create a space for those young people?
Right. So some yes, some no. Like a lot of other places, New York passed a law called the Juvenile Offender Law that allowed kids as young as 13 years old to be tried as adults. But there's a way back provision on that law, so you start in adult court, but the judge could decide now you're going to be treated as a juvenile. Most of them are treated as juveniles, even the ones that are. The law only applies to kids who have committed violent crimes. So they are allowed to transfer back, and most of them do transfer back. So they would be included in this program. If they're not transferred back, if the judge keeps them in adult court and sentences them as an adult, and if they go to prison, they go to prison. But until they're 21, they do it in upstate juvenile facilities, and then at the age of 21, if they still have time left to serve, they go to an adult prison. So they would not be in these close-to-home facilities. But most of the kids who commit violent crimes are sent back to juvenile court, and then they would go to these facilities.
My question is for Milwaukee and Wisconsin. We're going through a paradigm shift here in this juvenile justice thing. We're taking the kids and bringing them closer to home. I see it. Why was the inner city not considered in placing or reconstructing some of these old MPS schools, some of these old vacant buildings that we have around the city of Milwaukee, some of these mansions that are in foreclosure on the downtown area and Charter Park area? I mean, we got the structures here that are just falling apart and need to be. Why I don't see the purpose of us building a brand new prison where we can use these constructs that are already available to us and that need some TLC, that need some attention.
Well, I think that's a valid concern, and one that we certainly have considered. We've looked at over 70 sites around the county. We've ruled some out, many of them out because of things like environmental concerns, not being on the bus line, not being close to the families we serve. We also have to consider demolition costs for some of those facilities that you mentioned. We're not able to repurpose because of the rules around that are going to govern and license these new secure residential facilities. So that provided some limitations too because of the way that administrative law is written around it.